Republicans agreeing today to block across-the-board tax increases set for midnight. The tentative deal would extend Bush-era tax cuts for families making $450,000 a year and individuals making $400,000. It would also increase the taxes on estates worth more than $5 million and extend unemployment benefits for 1 year. The deal is hung up in a dispute over spending cuts, something the president suggested being handled within the next few months. The House will not vote before midnight on the Cliff deal, and it's unclear if the Senate will vote today. That process could take a couple of days, but lawmakers say it could be made retroactive. Well, earlier today, Dustin Wilson sat down with 2 Arkansas congressmen, Senator Mark Pryor and Representative Tim Griffin, to hear what they had to say is keeping Congress from getting a deal done.
Okay, first we want to thank Senator Pryor and Congressman Griffin for joining us this evening. Obviously, the fiscal cliff on the minds of a lot of Americans and Arkansans. Senator Pryor, we want to start with you. First off, your thoughts on President Obama's comments this afternoon.
My guess is that there are some House Republicans and some Senate Republicans who are resistant to any kind of deal right now, and probably he's trying to build public support.
Now we turn to Congressman Tim Griffin. Congressman, first off, let's start with the president's comments this afternoon. What are your thoughts from his speech?
Well, I think the president has misled the American people over the last, during the last campaign. He has led people to believe that if we would somehow raise taxes on wealthy, which includes small businesses, mom and pop shops, by the way, that if we would somehow raise money on them, then the taxes on them, then we could pay down the debt, reduce the deficit. And it's just not true. We have about $1 trillion deficit every year if there are no tax increases, and we have about $1 trillion deficit every year with the president's tax increases.
President Obama mentioned the wealthy paying more. I know Republicans are going to disagree with that. And has that been the sticking point for the most part in these negotiations?
The Republicans don't want to see taxes go up on anybody under any circumstance, even though a lot of tax rates have changed temporarily. So, for example, something like a capital gains rate or something like that has gone down to 15%, which I voted for, by the way. I've supported that. But when you're looking for revenue and when you do those to try to stimulate the economy, try to get some job growth, and, you know, there's going to be an end date to that.
Give us a scenario of how a deal could impact Arkansans, and if a deal is not passed, how that could also impact the state.
Well, there's a long list. I mean, literally 10 or 15 or more items that will happen if we don't get any kind of deal. So, for example, basically there'll be well over 1 million families in Arkansas whose taxes will go up starting tomorrow.
Congressman, you mentioned spending cuts not being addressed by the president. How would you, or what suggestions do you have to make those adjustments?
A lot of times when you hear people talk about cuts, what they're simply talking about is a slowing of the growth. If we would just freeze the federal budget as it is, just freeze it in place for 5 years, you would have immense savings.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time this evening. We appreciate it. But for now, America continues to wait for a decision from Washington. Liz?
All right, Dustin, thank you. And speaking of fiscal cliff, we know by now that many of you are tired of even hearing about it, so much that the phrase has even made a not-so-popular list of words that could be banned from the English language. Find out what other words made the list next.
Today's THV is sponsored by Wilson.